Good afternoon. Welcome to the Hayden Urban Renewal Agency meeting. Today is May 12th, and my name is Rhonda Mitchell. I am the chair. Can we have a roll call, please?
Rhonda Mitchell.
Here.
Steve Meyer. Colin Meehan. Randy McIntyre.
Here.
Michael Thayer. Matt Roeder.
Here.
Joy Richards.
Here. Great. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and join in my leading us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, calling for any conflicts of interest. Hearing none. Do we have any visitor public comments? Nope. Okay, but thanks for joining us.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, reviewing the consent calendar. Does anybody have any questions regarding the consent calendar? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Continuing business. Let's discuss the Civic Center and next steps. Melissa, do you want to get us started on that agenda item?
Right, so I put a little memo in there to just kind of update you all, kind of what's happened since we had that last workshop. And I think that maybe Matt wasn't present at the last, were you not at the workshop? So I also put some of the, I didn't include all of the materials, but I included what I thought were kind of the highlights out of the packet that was from that workshop. So Bernard Wills, they presented to us in March. The conclusion was that what you all envision could fit on the property. I think the consensus was that maybe what they showed was a little bit more grand than what some had in mind, and so it could get scaled down. But at least we know that a community center / senior center and an indoor sport court, a gym, would fit, and the parking necessary, and all of that could get expanded and fit. I think that's what we really wanted to know, and so we're there. Since then, and then the park, then also like some improvements to the park, which I think were really well received, which would require more or less relocating this existing small ball field to Crawford Park to allow for more parking and that kind of thing. So I think everybody was like, yeah, that would be great. And so since then, Rhonda and Randy and I met with the senior center, and I put some notes in here for that. So they're concerned. Well, they're excited. They're, I guess, apprehensive that it will happen. You know, they're a little bit like apprehensive.
This is
I
a
guess.
great idea.
Great idea, but not getting too excited because they're
yeah.
right. And then just kind of confirming with them the type of space that they would need and the size. And so it is around that 8,000 square foot mark that we've heard before. Having just like a big space that they can partition off is probably best. They do need a commercial kitchen, but it doesn't need to be really big. It just needs to have the commercial style equipment, because they need to be able to cook for roughly 70 people. They need to be able to sub it out. So they want, in their old space, they had a church that would come in on the weekends. they've had events there that they could rent it out. So they want that ability, like whatever their new space is, they definitely want to be able to generate revenue in that way. And then, I don't know, you can read here in the memo, but they were totally willing to share a building with the community center, but they wanted to make sure that their part of it would kind of be their part of it, if that makes sense, not like shared with the community center. They don't want to share bathrooms, they don't want anyone else to have access to the kitchen, that type of thing. And then they need some office space, and some stuff like that. They said basically they need a pretty simple but functional space. It doesn't have to be super fancy. So
part of the discussion when we were looking at this, and then, you know, the original plan that the architect put together had the big basketball gym because the city was kind of asking for that, and there was some talk about, well, the city could also have some office space because they're a little bit confined, and maybe even hold city board meetings there because of space. But then we're looking at quite a few things that kind of came into the discussion. One, the dollars to make this happen through grants and otherwise. How would the building sustain itself? But then also there's the legislative laws that are out there regarding what monies that we can put into municipalities, to gyms. And so we are restricted up to $1 million. Otherwise, we would have to go for public vote, 2/3 majority.
2/3.
yeah, it's a
Two-thirds.
super majority.
It's a super majority. So,
But the senior center and a community center on their own don't meet that requirement, so we wouldn't have to get a vote of the people.
right.
It's the sports court and what they consider to be administrative buildings. So city halls, fire stations, stuff like that.
So we talked about scaling it down anyway, so the thought is, well, do we just look at maybe a 16,000 square foot? Give seniors have 8 and 8 for a community center. And take a look at a footprint like that and figure out what would a building like that cost us. When we visited with the seniors, one of their questions to us was, what financially do you want from us towards this building? They have limited resources. I kind of threw out one thought is we could build a shell. They provide all the tenant improvements, including, the equipment, all of their stuff that they need.
Yeah.
And they were very acceptable to that. They just need to know up front so that they can budget, have fundraisers, so on and so forth for that piece of the equation of the building. So, question, Melissa, with our agreement with the architect, do we have any resources left from that initial for any more drawings?
No.
So if we move
no.
forward, we would have to pay for more drawings.
Right.
Right?
It was just supposed to be a pretty high level concept to get people comfortable with, okay, this does fit on this site and here's how it could be configured and that type of a thing. So, and we did the original proposal or request for proposal saying that it could be phased, so you wouldn't have to go back out to select someone else. You could just do phase 2 of that same project if you wanted to.
So is that something that we're interested in moving forward, maybe having another drawing so that we can establish a cost to build the building?
I think we have to decide whether it's going to be 2 levels or 1 level,
No.
and how
And if it's
simply
gonna include a
are we going to
gym.
use the style of this building, just reproduced, rather than, the one they did was exquisite, but $20 million. So.
Or we
So it's a
thought,
no-go.
like, they didn't give us a cost, but we just thought it seemed awfully expensive. Just looked
It was
expensive.
beautiful.
Looked big, looked expensive, yeah.
But-
And I thought, yeah, based on what they gave us, I mean, the ground, depending if the city wants a gymnasium or not, we could contribute to it, but the bulk of that, majority of that cost is gonna go to the city, and I don't know that the city's gonna find a way to fork over money for a gymnasium at this point in time, but this could be laid out.
Yeah, the
I
footprint
think the
and the
main,
use of the
main
whole
corridor
property
through there may
can
not need to
still
go
be
through,
used.
but we
The
could.
park, I think that was fabulous, the park and theater area.
And Melissa and I also did some due diligence on the park piece and looked at if we could move the baseball field over to Crawford,
Park.
how much would it cost? And then provide additional parking.
Well, the parking, I think, is key.
So key. So I did
Anything else?
put like just some real planning level costs together in this spreadsheet, and this was just my idea on how maybe you could split some things up. This was, I put just for discussion on there because I just, didn't want anyone to get too hung up, but I was looking at, getting grants for the park, that kind of stuff, and seeing if what we could afford. I think that HURA probably has about $7.5 million to spend through the end of this district. So,
Did you do any calculations with the other piece with the
I don't know,
new
I need to
legislative
talk to
bill?
Pete. I don't know
Okay.
how it would affect things if the fire district opts
So-
out.
I don't know if you're aware that the Bill 436 was passed, and now fire districts, ambulances can opt out of urban renewal district, which would change our revenues and budgets.
Oh,
So
significantly?
that's-
I don't know, it'd just be their component of it, so I'd have to see if the county has some sort of estimates on how that would change
Fire
things.
districts have a large.
I can pull it, what I can do is I can pull on one piece of property, right, how much the portion from the fire district is on that property, but I don't have any way of pulling it for all the properties. If that makes sense.
There's a assessed value for the whole city, and it's like 3.5 billion, something like that. And then you can look at that levy rate for EMS or the fire district, and figure out what that number would be for the city of Hayden.
I know, but each property has different increment value, so I don't know, I don't think it's necessarily exactly the same on each property.
Well, the levy rate's the same.
I know, yeah, yes, I do understand that, so I know, I was thinking maybe I could do that, but when I pulled other properties in the past, like because the increment's different on each property, it's
That's true.
it's not as easy as the math's not that easy. But maybe the county has it in a way that I could pull it.
So, look, trying to understand this discussion purpose only budget, you figured the HURA funds would come out to 11,607, taking our current balance plus the additional 4.5 you think we're gonna get? Is that what-
I was just adding up how much I thought, so I was even saying that some of this in this table might extend beyond the life of this existing district, So I think all of this sums up to 16.8 million, which we obviously don't have that much money. So, or so, you know, everything in this list. If you only have 7.5 million or
And there are
7
gonna be other
million.
requests for money for
How?
other things.
No, but I did,
Oh,
I mean, I do have the at least 2 of the intersections that I know about on there, you know.
Mhm.
So, basically, I just wanted you to have some idea of the magnitude of cost we're probably looking at to have a way forward, maybe.
I have a concern, because I heard that they want a kitchen that serves 72 people. So the senior center anticipated cost is gonna be $3.3 million. You know, I'd like to know how many people will they be not providing services to? You know, because if it's only 100 people, that's a really expensive building to service 100 people. I don't know how many people that they service.
I don't have that answer to that right this second, but they have a lot more than just their food service.
I understand, that's
They
like
have a
who they
ton
service
of
is what are
stuff
the
going
things-
on.
Yeah.
Classes, fellowship, like exercise classes. I think there's stuff going on all day, every day, I think.
That's just one of my concerns, is the expense of that building and how many people. And I know that's a valuable age group that needs that kind of service, but also we have to be practical on what it's gonna cost. And that's-
Yeah, that's where we need to like dial down the cost, so just doing some rough math, you have 8,000 square feet at $200 a square foot.
I estimated it at 250.
Okay, you estimated at 250, okay, 8,000, 250.
And then I added in contingency, and I mean,
Okay, because then the parking lot and other landscape, that's separate, right? Is that
Mhm.
for the building? So I think this might be, cost might be overstated. We don't know for sure. Do you know what I'm saying? Because we needed.
I also like inflated everything to 2027. You know, I tried, you hate to undershoot, so, but I
Right.
did use the 250.
250.
Have we come to a consensus as far as what the priorities are, as far as the sports court, senior center, the community center? I mean, you know, this is the big package. You know, what if we, and these are big numbers, and I know possibly can be phased, but what should be the priority? That's the question I like to know, is what the board thinks about what the priority is.
Right, so that's what I put in the memo, like that's kind of what this discussion is. I think we need to define the scope, determine what HURA wants to construct. Is it a senior center only? Is it a senior center plus a community center? Is it a senior center plus a community center and reserve space for the sport court? Or is it some combination of all of those, you know, that I haven't thought of? So, I think that we're to the point where
Do you have
to
some
define
thoughts on
that.
that, Matt? I mean, how
Well,
you view the community and where you think the needs are?
My concern is that the cost of a senior center, plus the city is contributing about $36,000 a year to support the senior center now. You know, if a building was built, would we continue to pay them that money? I don't know what the council's, how they're gonna answer that question. But the question is also then who is going to pay for the management of that senior center? You know, will it pay for itself? Do they have enough funds to participants to pay for it, to maintain it? That to me, I have a higher priority in a community center, in a sports court, because I think it'd be used by a lot more citizens than just, if you compare it to the numbers of the seniors. I don't have any data, but that's my gut. So my priority would be community center's sports court first. But maybe there could be a phase, possibly there's an area where a building for the senior center could be added at a later time when they come up with enough money to make that happen. Because we're talking about a lot of dollars here, and I don't know where that's all gonna come from.
Yeah, I think as a group, we talked a lot about senior center, and I think their thought was the city could get out of $30,000 a year, but that's a small amount. And they'd probably have to lease it to the senior center, what the lease would look like. I'm not sure, it'd be probably a very low dollar lease, but we'd have to,
Can they do that if we're funding it, and can they lease it out,
they'd have to lease it. The way we're looking at it here, I think we'd have to lease that space to the senior center, and they want to be able to sublet it, and the lease would probably be less, would probably have to be a small amount, but get the city out of $30,000. But the senior center, if there was another piece of ground, there might be a better way to help them to build a building more specific to their use that wouldn't need to be built to quite the same standards or level, something that. But I would agree, I think when Bernardo Wills took this concept, they kind of looked at the park and everything and tried to say what other cities have done, and the gymnasium was something that they certainly felt a city with parks and recs and everything might need, to try and tie a senior center in with that. Makes sense to me. I think the building would have to be laid out differently, but the city would have to agree to lease that space to the senior center, figure out what that looked like, and decide what we need. Obviously, it seems the urban renewal district could support the gymnasium in some way, but not a huge.
Well, we can't
huge way.
see.
It can't be more than $1 million.
It can't be more than $1 million.
Total cost of the building or our contribution to
The
it?
percentage of the,
Our contribution to it.
Well, but we heard it, Leslie went out to vote. Is that a vote that if the city finds a way to finance it, that's okay? Or do you go out to the people and say, we need $5 million, will you approve this for this project? Because that question hasn't been answered. I don't know if there was a community center and a gym, the community might support that. We don't know that.
Yeah, we don't know that.
Correct, right.
So it might work.
We'd have to pay for going out to a vote, and then we would have to have the time associated with getting a vote and all of that.
But would that be with a like a bond levy? You're going to go out and borrow money, you're going to say, we need to borrow
no,
that?
it's only if we donate or fund more than $1 million, then it would have to go.
Regardless of where it comes from?
Right.
Okay.
It
that's
doesn't
all.
have anything to do with the bond.
Okay.
It just,
I think the city, if they had the money, we could contribute to the project like we've done with others, but we have a limit, right? Is that
True.
what I'm hearing? That we have a limit of what we could contribute on a project like this, if it includes the gymnasium?
Right, but you can figure the percentage of the cost for the gymnasium, if I understood
Yeah.
that correctly, right?
yeah, that's the way I understood it too. And I did include the Idaho statute here for you. So that's the way I thought. So like you could say, well, HURA is only gonna spend $700,000 for the gymnasium. Anything above that has to come from others or something like that, It doesn't wrap into the community center and the senior center. Those are okay to spend urban renewal funds on without a vote. That makes sense. Another idea that Rhonda and I did talk with Pete about was potentially, like, there's different contract mechanisms where you can get the contractor involved earlier in the process, like design build or CMGC, which maybe Randy's familiar with, but which CMGC is Construction Manager General Contractor, and it lets them price things out as the architect is designing it to like be a little bit more cost effective. Like, hey, let's do this instead because it would reduce cost, or let's do, you know, so.
We don't need gold leaf.
Right, so to kind of keep them in check and like, you know, that way they don't, I don't know, spec out windows that are special order. Hey, you could just buy these and do these instead and they're half the price or something. Just as a way, because I think everyone's thought was that this is a really good thing, but we don't need like the grand scale that was maybe presented. It needs to be practical still. And so maybe these costs that I have here are too high. I just wanted to give you something to look
What
at.
are your thoughts? I want to hear from you.
Wow. I think we just have to make it much more economical and not nearly as fancy. This building isn't fancy, and yet it serves its purpose. So, you know, I would love to have the 2 stories with the fabulous glass and the balconies and all that, but I would say keep it simple. How simple?
Yeah.
I think that would appeal more to the voters and those, you know, who are watching our money. I mean, it's our gift to the city.
Right.
And so, but I think we should be very mindful of how plain vanilla can it be so that we can include more. But the senior center is my top priority.
Mhm.
Yeah. Had we,
But I can understand it's not used by nearly, you know, the youth. We're over requested for space for basketball and soccer and everything else. And I guess my second choice would be taking out the parking lot and making it a field that can be used for practice here. Enhancing the park. I
That
think a lot of
part.
people, yes, I thought that was a fabulous idea with the sloped area for people to watch, listen to music, and I think that so much of the use would be in the summer and to draw people here and have more parking. So having the inside court is not a priority for me. I think people use this more in the spring and summer. I mean, if we have to cut something, maybe have the space available if at some other point somebody would.
Well, and the way I understand it, is they do have the availability for basketball by renting the school districts.
Yes, but they have greater need than what they can find.
Greater need.
they do.
Yes.
And I see the basketball court more than just a basketball. I'll give you an
Sure.
example. We wanted to do a memorial service maybe at the Croc Center, and it's so booked up. You cannot, it's almost impossible to get. And so if this was another venue that could be open, it's not just a basketball court,
That's a good
but where
point.
there's tables and people can have a banquet there, or we could have some kind of meeting or whatever. There's a need for that. And so that it isn't just a basketball court. At least that's how I'm
So it's a
thinking.
huge, big meeting room maybe rather than a court.
Right, but you
Yeah.
can have,
I mean, think about the elementary schools. They hold functions in those
Mhm.
gyms. They're, you know, they
They're
hold
multi-use.
assemblies and stuff, and I think that, is that what
do
you're
they have
saying?
assemblies in them?
Yep.
Good. That's,
They have a bit of a stage too.
yeah.
Well, that's not hard to put the stage up.
No.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
a
that-
permanent one, you know. for-
That could be
Yeah.
part of it, sure.
I think we just have to go to a much simpler plan.
Okay, so do we want to pay for the architect to do another drawing to get us a
Like more refined.
more, yeah, and a better idea of costs?
Or do we give a perimeter? I mean, do we give it?
At this point in time, I think we sketch out what we think might work first, you know, and get with the senior center people and see if we built this shell, would this shell be okay for you? Do we need the grand hallway and
No,
corridor
no.
through here?
No,
Do
yeah, I
we-
think that
do we
we're
need
like,
one less
we're
entrance and just
scrapping
fire
all of
door
that.
out? Some of that, you know, with the space that's there, I think.
Can we build the building for $5 million? Can we do the
Right.
park? I mean, say, what can we get size-wise
Yeah.
for $5 million? 6 million?
I was thinking the 5 million number myself.
I think
Okay.
Matt's correct. Every church around here that has a gymnasium and every school uses those gymnasium, they're multi-purpose
Right.
facilities. And that,
It would get a lot of use in that
But-
regard.
as far as our contribution, we'd probably have to call it a gymnasium. But if the gymnasium's $1.6 million of the project, maybe the city can find $600,000.
But remember, these are just me. This is just me doing a little research and talking to contractors and stuff like that, you know.
For $200 a square foot to build is what you're saying? Is that
I did it at 250.
250?
We'd
So what's
heard,
the largest size building we can get? And maybe somewhat unfinished, and, I mean, maybe we contribute the shell.
yeah, I mean, I do.
I mean, because if we only have, we say
It's
7 million,
usable.
you thought 11 million by the time the district ends. But right now, we only have, what, 4 million?
They're 3.5.
Oh,
And who knows what else will pop up.
I know, so,
Okay, so, I mean, this is good direction, so I could figure out with a cap of 5 million.
we can
And
embellish
way
later,
less.
right? Outside, I mean.
What if we utilize some of our citizens that are experienced in building and ran some rough stuff and got an idea of maybe pricing today in today's market?
Okay. I mean, the parking lots and stuff are pretty accurate just because that's what I do. So
Right.
I did pull that. But I did inflate these. I mean, they include contingency because you would have to. And they
Right.
include inflating it to 2027 because we're not building it this year. We're not building it next year, you know? So likely. So, I mean, I was trying to give you some real idea of
You
cost.
scared us.
I don't think I don't think they're probably that far off,
No,
honestly. Yeah. But there might be ways to lower costs even further than that.
Any other suggestions on how we should move forward in this process?
I think we need to meet with the city. Once we draw a I think we could draw a picture. I could have our CAD guys draw a picture for that matter that I think better suits the, and we need to get back with the city though and get with them regarding the logistics of how do senior centers generally work in a community. If the city owns the building, or the urban renewal district for a little while owns the building, which they wouldn't in this case because it'd be a partnership no matter what. How do you work out those long-term leases, you know, other cities probably have addressed this situation before as far as having senior center space available to people. And, you know, to me, it looks like it would work if we redraw this plan. We'll have our basic structure, we build the shell, the senior center gets access to that shell and they do the
Tenant improvements.
tenant improvements, the fixturing and fixturing. Which,
I mean, they just have very basic needs. They're just looking for a big space. They wanted some of those dividers, but that's
They
not
would
a
need some
big deal.
storage area, they need a couple offices and like a meeting room, but it doesn't need to be big or fancy, just a space that they have
Yeah.
a table they can hold their board meetings. So nothing,
Their flooring could be a
Pretty
cement
basic.
slab.
So Randy, you mentioned about leasing. Would HURA lease the building to the senior center or the city lease it to the, what are you thinking?
if HURA was the owner of the building, say like they are the current buildings that are there, HURA owns those buildings and leases those out, they could do it, but we know it's a temporary situation. I think in this case, we know that it's gonna be a shared cost project, more than likely. But if we could do it within the HURA budget initially,
But you're right,
HURA-
once we
HURA would
build
probably
it,
be-
who's going to sustain it after the district
you know,
ends?
and we'd be-
Does the city want to assume any of this
that's why we need to
responsibility?
work as a partnership always, I think. 'Cause we're gonna hand it to the city, and I don't wanna hand them
A
a
problem?
problem. Even though I know a gymnasium, the city park and rec people could either use it for their own uses or rent it out. All, you know, those gyms rent out for practice space for a pretty fair amount of money.
I would say if we don't figure out a project to leave,
Yeah, we need to,
then the money will be used for infrastructure, will be used for improvements in intersections and so forth.
I think that it
I'd like
could-
to leave something for the city that HURA
Yeah.
did that is a gift to all of the city.
I think it could also just, the money would just go back to just go back.
That would
And
be
you
a shame.
I know, because there's not a project that we're ready to fund that we haven't already funded, that the city is ready to go on. Intersection wise,
I
or,
know we've done
we've done them all.
ton of the
yeah.
pre-work for the city on all their little intersections that they need, and
And nothing else is quite shovel-ready, is
they're
that?
not,
Yeah.
they're just not
Nothing.
moving forward on those projects.
Yeah, we need to get those right-of-ways and have those included in the district, and I don't think we've approved that yet.
Right, it's still in
Once we approve
process.
that, then we can move forward, but until that happens. So we're still in that, it's an arduous, long process just to get
Right.
those little pieces of the puzzle in place.
One thing I'd like to say is, as far as seniors in our community, you know, if the senior center was there, I don't know how many people are there currently, but if they had a permanent home that was the proper home, maybe they would reach out to a lot more of our senior population, which is a pretty good sized group.
Mhm.
We do put millions of dollars into parks and soccer fields and baseball fields, and then the city does a beautiful job of maintaining those. But the seniors right now at this point aren't served.
They're homeless.
They're not served well by soccer fields, baseball fields, but I think there's some legitimacy to having something, a space available for them to use.
Well, we
for
know
their
there's a
programs.
need, and they're excited about it. I think that's the one thing we can go forward with.
Yeah.
Well,
We don't
and-
have a group asking us for a basketball court, I mean, the public.
And
The
community
the
center-
city
I think
has
it's-
lots.
How do we visualize the community center being utilized?
I think the gymnasium would be a big part of that, because you could do.
Like Memorial
different
Day,
types
if
of
we're raining and
programs.
hailing, you go inside, Veterans Day, any event that could be outside and the weather is bad.
So would a community center be, once again, someplace that maybe the Chamber of Commerce could have lunch?
Yeah.
Multi-purpose, a
Yeah.
multi-purpose.
So it would have to have its own kitchen facility?
I don't think
That-
the Croc Center has their own kitchen facility. I think
Oh,
they
they
just
just
cater
cater
it
it
in.
in?
Mhm.
I know that most churches have done away with the commercial kitchen
Okay.
facility because commercial kitchens are very expensive. They have to be inspected, maintained, and they've gone to a smaller kitchen where food can be brought in and held warm or be rewarmed
Okay. I see
rather
what you're
rather
saying.
than that. The community center.
Well, Melissa, how quick could the park, that whole design that they've done, would that be something that could be done within a couple of years? I mean, that's just a fabulous
Yeah.
rendition of.
One thing that we were thinking is there are grant funds for that, for parks, for outdoor parks, not indoor parks. And so if the city, that's what I was just talking to Susie about, is you guys both walk by, the next time to apply for those grant funds is August of 2026. So that would probably be 2027 construction as well.
And so that's what we were thinking, they could apply for a grant fund so we can move the baseball field, but then we could pay for the,
Yeah.
Park improvements,
Parking
I mean,
lot.
it was just such a great idea, the way they presented it with the area for
Yeah, so-
band shelter.
Yep,
and-
totally. I mean, it's so great. And so
and
that's.
the walking trail and moving the children's area to.
You can ask for quite a bit of money in that program too. You know, a lot of grants are almost not worth going after because they're such a small amount. But this program, I mean, you can ask for 6, 7, 800,000. So you can ask for like a decent amount of
so
money.
that's what we were thinking.
I
The city
agree.
could get the funding
Certainly.
for the improvements there, but the grants, aren't as available for this building.
Yeah, you can't do it right of way, but you could plan for that in a couple of years.
So what I'm hearing is, Dory was saying too, is that, and I like the idea if we could move forward on the parks part of it, if the city would concentrate on funding for that, is that what I'm hearing? And then the building, the community center, senior center is really our focus? Is that what we're kind of
Right.
talking about?
And that, but we would help, well, with part of that park design, creating a parking lot where the softball field is. And we could pay for that, because that isn't, I don't think that goes into, the grant money wouldn't cover that, is that correct? Or maybe it would?
Could, it did at Crawford Park.
So I like the idea because, well, if we started, say the city started working on the parks part of this, you know, we don't have a termination of our district for that. We're the city, we're gonna keep going. So if we could move ahead on that, and then however funds could be integrated in that, we could move now.
Right, you could.
And I think I like that idea, and whatever money, because we're concerned about the year 2030, and that our monies could get dispersed back out if we don't use them. And somehow to make sure that if we don't get this building stuff done, that maybe that money could at least go into the parks and spend it there, because I don't want that money to go away.
So, so what we're saying is the city needs to start applying for these grants.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, because we're here looking for direction.
Have a year to prepare, but yeah.
Yeah, and we're looking for direction. That would be my thought, is to, my 2 cents is, let's get moving on that and get grants going on there and have the city concentrating on that portion.
Okay, I like that.
Okay, so the grant application isn't even out until August of 2026. That's like more than a year away, so I
Yeah,
don't know that that's gonna
time to
be.
prepare.
Yeah, but that would give, the city probably needs time to assign that to somebody. I don't know
Public
if you have any.
meetings and all kind of stuff, you know,
And
we hear about
and
this.
it really looks, the park concept, Matt's probably right, I think that could be phased. Because, you know, if the works department moves into their new home, then that part of the park might be ready to be done. If we find a home for the baseball field, which, I don't know if we have a home for the baseball
Well,
field.
and Crawford Park, I mean, that we
Crawford Park has
should,
it.
we should pay for that. I mean,
So
we
then
could do that
well,
now.
if it's already got a
So,
home,
well,
then we could probably work on
We've
that
already,
side some.
we've already
so.
talked to the architect about, is there space over at Crawford Park for the softball field? And there is, and it would be a nicer, bigger, because this really isn't a
Yes,
legal
for
size.
the
Right.
Baseball-
bigger hitters,
baseball,
is it?
Right, but but once again, they would need to apply for that grant to move the softball field over.
But why couldn't we do that?
Well, we could, but then you won't get
Yeah,
the grant
limited
funds.
funding.
I see.
And they have grant money for that.
Leverage. I mean, it's a 50% match program, so that's what Profit Park that you all helped fund
Yes.
had a grant, and then HURA helped fund the match, the 50%, you know, because it's only 50% funded by the grant.
I mean, a year's not far away, but yeah, that's.
So the grant,
we had
even
it-
to move the
if the city was
baseball
very
field
focused,
is,
Right, you need to.
2 years
I think
away.
you need to start planning it now. I don't know what goes into a grant process, but.
And the closer we get to 2030, the more I worry about that.
yeah,
That's why
Right.
if we can
do something.
get what we can accomplish with the money we have, I say let's go for it.
Okay,
Be nice to get those matching funds whenever possible.
Yeah.
I mean, they could always apply, like if you all wanted to move the ball field, build the new parking lot, and then the city just applies for the grant funds to do other things in the park, then maybe that would be fine. You know,
Yeah,
that would be a way
I
to move
just
forward
think that
faster.
limits our funding availability
It does.
for the building itself. That's why we're trying to manage.
Right.
But is that gonna be done before 29?
That's fine.
Yeah, that's,
What,
It can be
the
done,
building?
but- Well, I think Melissa's target is reasonable. I mean, if we
Right.
started construction in 2027, you'd be
Right.
You'd be
done
done.
by 2029. And you'd be able to hopefully leverage as much grant money as you also could, but both us and the city need to be focused, because if it's a year until you can apply for those grants, time goes by fast.
So I think
We
at
could
least
even
that,
start building the building in 2026,
Yeah,
though,
we could.
right? I mean, there's
Correct.
no reason why we couldn't.
I think it's really important that however we approach this is have the architect give us phases that would definitely, that if we can only go this far with this amount of money, we'll get that done. If we do get some donations, we find another source of money, we do that. And I don't know how, I know that's complex. You can't, it's not easily dividable, but I like the idea that he has the instructions. Please phase this and give us dollar amounts for those phases so that we can try to work on chunks at a time.
So parking might be the first phase.
Right, but that would be a priority.
On either side, yeah.
That would be used now, more readily.
Yeah, parking would be
than the
used right
building.
now.
Do you
Well,
want me to
kind of
talk
go-
to them about what a next phase might look like? Just, because
Well-
right now we have a concept, that's all we asked for, just
I-
move to like a 10% design or something?
I think we need to go back and we need to scale it down.
That's
We need to talk to them about, more
actual floor plans,
efficiencies.
yeah.
We don't need grand walkways to waste square footage and all of that. And draw a plan, and we need to get some pricing on that.
Okay.
And then let's, what is that reality? And,
Okay.
and then, but get an idea, what does it cost for the senior center, community center, and then the basketball courts? Right, so
Okay.
if we do need to phase it, or try to say, well, we can't do basketball courts now, or whatever.
We can have a big room that we use for meetings and gatherings and rent it out, is what you're saying. It's not the basketball court, but some
Right.
large room.
But there would be space if down the road the city wanted to do a basketball court.
Leave that open.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure they could add that, I don't know. Okay, so that's our direction to Melissa then, is just to go back to the architect, let's dial this down a little
We'll
bit.
go back and talk to them about a scope and bring that forward at the next meeting, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
And within the square footage we have available.
Yeah, so
maybe we
not
get
knowing-
that together with the senior center and see.
knowing that 8,000 for the senior, maybe 8 for the community, and whatever the basketball court takes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
I can do that.
Any other questions or thoughts?
There's a lot of moving parts.
I know.
I know.
Yeah, it's
It's
like-
hard to keep it like inching forward, you know?
Thanks for taking the time to meet with them, kind of nailing some of this down. Because this, I mean, at one time, they said that they were talking to an architect across the street about a building, and that there was funding, and it just, things seemed to didn't materialize, and hopefully they can come up with a good chunk of money, is my concern.
Well, and that's what they want to know. What chunk of money do we need to come up with? That was their question.
They
right?
did ask that, because
What
they
chunk of money
would do
we
a
need to come up with So
fundraising.
we can fundraise now to get the chunk of money.
Well, can we say on just a rough budget, $3.3 million is what it's gonna cost, and some portion of it they're gonna have to fund, I mean.
Well, that's what we were
half of
kind of thinking, that we'll build you the shell.
it. Right.
You're in charge of all the tentative.
So what are those numbers? Can we give them a number?
That's
Yeah,
what I
that's
thought
what
we
we're
need to
working
get
on.
back and see
Yeah.
if those numbers
Okay.
would look.
Perfect.
And see, does that work for their budget? Can they fundraise that much? Yeah. Okay. Now we're moving on to our budget workshop.
Okay, I'm gonna pull it up on the screen because this printed.
Seems like we just did the budget.
I know. We gotta do it again. I'll pull it up because I'm worried you won't be able to read it.
Good, I can't read it, thank you.
Maybe she'll.
So what did you want?
Even my glasses would be able to read it.
So we're not, this isn't like, this is just a workshop, this isn't the hearing or anything. So, I've got the revenues here, so just can you see that, or do I need to?
Can you make it bigger even? I don't-
Maybe. see.
Okay, so projected through, and then what's your new projection for 2026? Is that, is that,
I think that.
what's that number?
This right here, this number?
The very first number in the.
3,000,006.
3,000,006?
Yeah, 3.6 million to carry forward
And what did
from
we,
this
what
year.
did we budget this year?
What do you mean? What did we?
What was our 2025 budget?
2.6.
2.6.
For how much we thought we were gonna carry forward? That's all this line is.
Oh,
This
the
is just
carry
the beginning
forward.
balance.
Carry forward. I'm sorry.
2.9 was the.
So this is total revenues
Projected.
down here. But sometimes I like to look at revenues without the carry forward because otherwise that kind of screws things up. So the actual revenues, you know, would just be the taxes and stuff that we would bring in, the increment.
So are we projecting, I guess that's my question, are we projecting the same or greater revenue for this next coming year?
I think about the same. I always try to be a little conservative here with the amount. And I did lower this just a bit, not knowing the fire district thing.
Right, that's, okay, good.
So I think I did like 95% of what I would normally project. So, I mean, our revenues right now are around $1 million
Okay.
a year. Last year, you can see the unaudited, so we're in the middle of the audit right now, our revenues were 1.3 million. We had a lot of interest, if you remember, because we had a lot of money in the LGIP, which we don't have quite as much money in the LGIP right now, so we're not getting as much interest. Because we reimbursed the city for a lot of things last year, so we have less cash on hand right now. So maybe $1 million, 1.1 million a year.
I think that would be conservative.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
been some very expensive buildings that went into service in 2024, and I believe they'll pop into the tax rolls for this year within our district, so.
That's possible too. We do get the revenues a year later, so you pay your taxes a year behind, so we might not see that for another year, but.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's like
A year and then
you
another
see it a
year.
year later, but could be a little bit more. Yeah, could be more. You guys want me to scroll down a little bit?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the expenses really haven't really adjusted much, have they? Other than our audits are going up a tad. And
Yeah, I imagine the audit's gonna go up. I kind of just left legal, and I left most of this stuff kind of the same. For the most part, maybe add like, a little percentage, just thinking that things might go up a bit.
okay, good. No, we don't need to go line item to line item.
On the infrastructure projects, we're just leaving some money budgeted.
Because we don't
When a project comes up.
know what it's gonna be necessarily.
What's the red?
I
line
had
item?
highlighted it in red so that you guys would
Civic
pay
Center.
attention to it. It's the Civic Center that we were just talking about. So I said
Oh,
that,
cost.
if we wanted to, that could be design.
Gotcha.
I just threw that in there. That,
That's good.
Design fees maybe
Yeah.
in the next fiscal year. And I also put a note when you all gave money to the city for Ramsey Road, the thought was that might not need that, right? Remember that included contingency, and like, if you don't need it all, you're giving it back, so I have that question, are we getting some of this back?
When
I
will
think
they
in
know?
the agreement, we said that around this time this year, they needed to let us know what amount we were getting back so that we could work it into our budget.
Okay, good.
So I need to get with them and figure that out. Maybe they'll say that, no, that is what it cost, but maybe we're getting a couple $100,000 back.
That we can use for the civic center.
Yeah. So, and then this is kind of what you guys were just talking about a minute ago. I put this in red too. I was like, well, should we start working on the park this year? So I was kind of having the same thoughts you all were. Like, well, we've got, I always say we, you have money to start spending, probably smartly, but coming to the end of the district. And then I did, based on this forecast here, I updated that revenue forecast spreadsheet that I think you guys probably remember from last year. But that's where I am getting this 7.5-ish million, because I look at our
Oh, okay.
revenues and our like regular expenses, not OPAs and not projects that you choose to do, but just the normal things, and how much money is left for capital type projects. And so that's, again, it could be conservative because we could have more come onto the tax roll than we've had in the past, but it's probably somewhere around that.
Where are we at on our OPAs? Aren't we just about finished with them?
We have 3 right
We still have
now.
3? Okay.
Yep. We have Rock Properties, Marketplace at Miles, and Chubb's. We paid off the H6. H6 is closed out.
Okay.
How about Odom? Has that been?
That's the H6
Okay.
one. It's closed out. We just finished paying it last round, 2 rounds ago. And so now Rock Properties was nested within that. So Rock Properties hadn't received anything until we could close out H6. Some of the properties, well, all of the properties that are in Rock Properties OPA were also within the H6. So Rock Properties has received nothing until we paid off H6. Now they're getting money. I can show you a map if, not right now, but, well, I could probably pull up a map if it helped. So, but remember, they get 75% of the increment that their property brings in.
Right.
So it doesn't really affect too much here.
Right. Well, that's good.
They have been fast to fill, I think.
Kind of puts it in perspective, doesn't it, that the $16 million.
Do you know of any
We only had 7 or
expenses
8.
or anything that you think?
And that's whatever else could proceed.
That's right.
That's why
Right.
I'm getting,
Right.
I'm concerned.
Yeah.
She knows
Right.
that stuff.
But maybe
Like-
you're just less responsive to the city's
Yes.
like whims, like maybe they need to say, this is what we want and plan for it, and not be the savior when they go over budget on something
Good idea.
for the next
Yes.
4 years. Because I mean,
Sometimes,
it's kind of hard to.
I wish we could do a better job at that, but it's like, that Ramsey Road extension had been going on for
I
12
know.
years, and all of a sudden, if we don't get this done, we don't have this, we not only lose the funding, we have to pay like a bunch of money back to.
I know,
And so that's the position, it's a lot of times it's the last minute.
I know.
This is what happens, and I'm just telling you from the council, we don't have a lot of advance notice on these things.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm sorry, but
But I don't think you have any other federal aid projects right now. So that
that's
might-
just one example.
I know, so it might not be a lot.
Or even the park at Crawford, we had
That was
that.
the last minute.
Yeah, that was the last bit, or else we lost
Got a grant on it. Had to chase, get the matching funds for the grant.
And mind you, we had a new city administrator, a new mayor, a new finance director, and gotta have a little grace, you know. I mean, we do a good job, but it's been a little rough,
Yeah.
so bear in mind.
Yep.
All right, let's
Joel,
go.
if you have
Thank you.
any, I'll probably bring this back. I think we generally do like another workshop and then have the hearing in July.
Yeah, I would like one more workshop on the
Yeah.
budget, just because of, 3 of our board members.
Yeah, so we can do that
That we can
again.
discuss it again. I think you have a very good handle on it. I don't see anything
Okay.
personally that's been overlooked, but everybody has kind of an idea or thought. So, yeah, let's do that. Again,
Okay.
Melissa, that'd
If
be
you
great.
see anything in the meantime that you thought, well, that's weird, just maybe email me or let me know or something, but.
All right, next on our agenda is you again. The executive director report.
Okay. Probably went through the majority of this already.
You never want Melissa absent at a board meeting.
What?
Never want Melissa absent.
We don't have a meeting unless you're here.
Nothing new on OPAs, and we just kind of discussed those a second ago anyway. Owl Cafe, I have to say that contractor, Peck and Peck, like that was like the smoothest project I think I ever had.
Wow.
They were great, and they did exactly what they said they were going to. Cleaned up, like the city never got any complaints. It was amazing. Anyway, so we're all done with that. You've paid them, and it's closed out. We're done. The Civic Center was a topic that we talked about earlier today. That HURA boundary expansion that needs to happen so that HURA can contribute to some of these intersection projects. That we do anticipate an update at the June meeting. So we don't have an update right now, but hopefully in June, that consultant will be back to update you all.
So, they actually, city council has to approve that, correct?
Yes.
We don't really approve anything, we're just, it's up to city council. So how does city council get updated on those? Do they meet with them separately, or should we invite city council for the June meeting? I guess is my question. Your city council votes on it.
Yeah, so my understanding is that Pete and their consultant have, like Pete's commented, I've seen the comments, like he's commented on the expansion documents on your behalf.
Right.
And then it'll come before you. I think you'll make a recommendation to council to approve it.
Okay.
Then it'll go to council and they'll have a whole other presentation for council.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Yep. No
not
update on 58 East Orchard, except to just note that the reason we didn't get a rent check, if any of you noticed that.
I noticed that.
Did you notice that? Well, we did too. They paid a little late, and both checks came. Have they come?
I didn't see them today.
Okay, so we contacted the property management company late last week, and they said, yeah, they paid a little late, but they did pay, and so both checks are coming at once. So
Well, I noticed there were kind of larger in some months and none in some other months.
they're kind of having the same, not as bad as before, and I've asked the property management company to be on top of it because we don't want to get to where they haven't paid for months or something. They've been kind of doing that, but they've always caught up in the same month. So.
Great.
And then the audit, we're to the phase where they choose at random some items and then ask us more detail about them. So I've never been involved in this because the city did HURA's finances, and so they dealt with it. So it's been pretty interesting, but sometimes challenging because some of the records are here in the city system, and so we're working through it. But we're to that stage, and I think we'll have our audit presented at the June meeting.
At the June meeting also.
Mhm.
Okay, everybody must be here for the June
June,
meeting.
be at the June meeting.
Big stuff happening. Great.
Yep, and then staffing, I think some of you met Casey, so
Welcome.
Lindsay's been the clerk here, and her other duties at work are just getting to be too much. So I wanted to introduce you to Casey. She's going to take over being clerk for HURA and helping me out. And she's awesome, so I think you'll like her very, very much.
Welcome.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And so she came today, and we're not charging you for her time today. She's just learning today, and then next month she'll take over.
I feel like you're even better today then.
Huh? We didn't want her to just throw her in without. So I think that's it.
Can I circle back to the Owl Cafe, just a question? I noticed that Cafe Meister parking is now that property. And do we have any concerns about liability and usage of that, or is it just considered public parking?
It's just a
And
public piece
we're-
of property.
From a liability standpoint, there's no problem?
There's no problem.
Okay, that's all.
It's the property itself is covered under ICRIM. There's no building on it anymore, but you're covered under ICRIM. Unless we wanted to fence the whole thing off,
No,
I
no.
mean.
Oh, no.
We want favorable.
Yeah,
no.
They're mad enough that we've gotten rid of the Owl Cafe. I mean, just people in general, they miss it, but parking is a plus.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Parking's the
No,
plus,
no,
yeah.
I'm just curious.
I did have them spray for weeds, so hopefully we won't have weeds to deal with this year.
Okay.
They sterilized it,
Good.
filled the potholes. Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully we'll be building something there soon.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? This was good discussion today. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your input and thoughts to make our Hayden community better. Our next meeting is June 9th. That's a very important meeting. Put it on your calendar. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
And I second it.
All right, all in favor? Yes.
Yes.
I-
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh.